What's going on? My name's Nick. This is Nick's Lotus, and this weekend a random old man walked up to me, asked me if I dyed my hair, and then said he didn't like it. Today I want to talk about 4 decks that aren't quite there. I didn't want to make full videos talking about each one of them because, as I just said, they're not full decks yet. But I do need your guys' advice on maybe how to finish them, some card tips, some suggestions, maybe cards to take out, stuff like that. And I also think they're pretty fun and cool deck ideas, so they might spark some kind of interest in you. So a little give and exchange here, right? A little give and take. We've got a Voltron deck, we've got a Clue deck, we've got a Haste Blink deck, and we've got a Life Gain Token deck. So we've got a pretty wide array of different strategies. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hype the video. And let's get into it, starting things off with the Voltron list. I've actually got the start to this deck here because I do think it's an interesting idea. It's just like I'm about that far into the list, and I'm kind of just like, you know what I mean, losing... not interest, but losing like actual cards to put in. So that's kind of where I need you guys on this one. The deck is an Azorius Voltron list built around Wraith Vicious Vigilante, being 1 a white and a blue for a 1/1 double strike. Wraith can't be blocked. So built-in evasion, the best evasion, cannot be blocked straight up. And double strike? Interesting. So my brain immediately went to Voltron. So first thing we're doing is a Voltron strategy. But the second thing my brain went to was any kind of on combat damage to an opponent triggers will trigger twice on Wraith because she has double strike. So if we can throw something like a Curiosity on her, whenever she deals damage to an opponent, draw a card, we'll draw 2 cards. So if we can stack up a bunch of effects like that onto Wraith, I think this is actually a really unique take on a Voltron commander. And the Voltron commanders has everything you want on a Voltron commander. The only thing it doesn't have is protection, so we also run some protection in here. The reason I'm having a hard time coming up with cards to put in here is a lot of the time the card I will want to put in here is like giving her double strike or giving her evasion, and I'm like, wait a second, she literally has both those things built in. I don't need to be doing this on equipments or on auras. She already has both those effects. So all we need to be doing with our auras is protecting her and buffing her, or giving her a on-combat damage trigger. So with the whole buff side of things, you can throw whatever you want in here to buff her. A couple that came to my head: Righteous Authority, 3 a white and a blue aura, enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +1/+1 for each card in its controller's hand. At the beginning of the draw step of enchant creature's controller, that player draws an additional card. Yeah, card draw as well as giving our Wraith card draw and giving our Wraith a huge buff. I think it's just a great card. Of course, all that glitters is going to be in here, giving a huge buff equal to the amount of artifacts and enchantments we control. And we run a ton of auras, so it's going to be a lot. Curious Inquiry is another one I think would be good in here. 1 blue for an aura. Enchant creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, investigate. With the double strike on Wraith, we'll be investigating twice every time it does combat damage. The 1/1 buff's going to be nice, again, because of the double strike, and it is still a Voltron deck. Something like Staggering Insight, again, giving a 1/1, and whenever this creature deals damage, draw a card effect on Wraith. You can stack these up on her, start drawing a ton of cards every time she connects, get her bigger and bigger with her double strike, plus these little +1/+1 effects that these auras are doing. And I think you've got a really interesting strategy. And of course, we're running so many auras that we can just run like an enchantment sub-theme. We could run Sigil of the Empty Throne in here, Mesa Enchantress to get some card draw in here, Psychosis Crawler. I love me a Psychosis Crawler to interact with all the card draw. I think it's pretty good, actually. It's not a bad Voltron list. What I like about it is it does have some backup plans. You could fire off with a Psychosis Crawler if you wanted to. I have like a From the Skies backup plan where we try to win with flyers. We've got Blessed Spirits that gets a 1/1 every time we play an enchantment. Herald of Amenity, whatever. It looks for enchantments off the top of your deck and also gets a big buff equal to the amount of auras you control. As we talked about, Sigil of the Empty Throne, stuff like that to kind of come in clutch as like a backup plan for the deck. But yeah, I think Wraith's very interesting. It's a deck that I've wanted to build for a while. When we went on that month break on the channel, Wraith was one of the decks I was really working on. We have like a 100 card rough draft on Moxfield, so I'll post that link down below. But yeah, if you've got any suggestions for this one, any cards that I should take out or add, please let me know down in the comments. And with that, we'll move on to the second deck idea of the video. Okay, so for this next one, I do not have a full 100 card deck. I have 26 cards in the deck right now. So this is one that I really need your guys' help on, but I think the idea is definitely strong. So first thing, this is a choose a background commander, so there are going to be 2 commanders in the command zone, technically. 1 enchantment, 1 a legendary creature. The legendary creature is going to be Val Candlekeep Researcher, being 3 and a blue for a 2/3 vigilance. You can tap her to add an amount of waste equal to Val's toughness. This mana can't be used to cast spells from your hand. So what are we going to use that mana for? We'll talk about it, but the background that we chose is Raised by Giants, being 5 and a green for a legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you own have base power and toughness 10/10, so that means Val will be tapping for 10 mana, 10 waste mana that we can't use to cast spells. What are we going to be using it on? Well, somehow, in her top decks, clue decks aren't a thing on EDH Rec for some reason. Yeah, we're going clues all day long, baby, because being able to tap Val for 10 mana, that's cracking 5 clues pretty much for free. That's a lot of value just to have in the command zone, just to be like, oh, I tap my commander and I draw 5 cards every turn, given that we can investigate enough times. And in Simic, it really does seem like we can investigate plenty. One of my favorite ways to investigate in Simic is Lotus, Cryptozoologist, being a green and a blue for a 1/2. Whenever another non-token creature enters under our control, we get to investigate. You can tap her, sacrifice X clues, target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. So you get to make a ton of So you get to investigate a ton off of creatures just ETBing on our side, which is crazy. And then turn our clues into stealing stuff from opponents? Yeah, I think I will. I think I will have seconds on that. Thank you very much. What about a Forensic Gadgeteer? Whenever we cast an artifact spell, investigate, we're going to be running mana rocks in the deck. I think every mana rock coming with an investigation is going to be pretty good. I can't help but think there's going to be also more artifacts in the deck once it's finished, so that's just going to be a good one. The main reason you're running this, though, is because it makes your artifacts cost 1 less to activate, so we can crack clues for 1 mana, which pretty much turns our commander into tap it, sacrifice 10 clues if we want to. Kind of busted. We run James Wandering Dad, being 2 and a blue for a 2/4. You can tap it to add 2 waste and spend it only to activate abilities. So again, we're using that to activate our clue tokens. But he can also play the adventure side of him for X and 2 blue to investigate X times, which that seems like a great mana sink in this deck. Unfortunately, you can't use Val to cast the adventure side because you can't use Val's mana to cast spells, but I still think James is pretty good in this deck. The Mechanist Aerial Artisan is fantastic. 2 and a blue, 1/3. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we get to investigate, and then we can tap it until end of turn. Target creature becomes a 2, or target artifact becomes a 3/1 construct creature, which is actually a great segue to another thing I think is good in this deck, which is going to be animating our clue tokens. So something like Cyberdrive Awakener, being able to turn our entire board of clue tokens into 4/4s seems pretty good to me. Something like Tangle Grove Kelp, literally turning every clue we have into a 6/6 plant. Sure, that seems pretty good. Kappa Cannoneer, getting bigger and bigger and unblockable every time we have a clue enter, which again, seems good. We're also in Simic, so it lets us run Essex. So the first time we would create 1 or more tokens during our turn, instead we choose a creature other than Essex and make that many tokens that are copies of that creature, which I'm sure won't get out of hand in this deck at all. Or Adrix and Nev, which can double the amount of tokens we're making, so double the clues. Simic lends itself to a perfect... Oh, and we also get Mutagen Man from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. Go ahead and have all of our artifacts cost 1 less to activate. Again, have this and the other one, Forensic Gadgeteer we were talking about, and your clues are free to sacrifice, which gets out of hand very quickly. I mean, or you could just play a Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh, and do that anyway. Have all your clues be free. Whatever, pick your poison. So we're getting like a ton of card draw, tons of clue creations, and then our commander makes a ton of mana that we can use to sack those clues. But then, like, keep in mind, our commander is still a 10/10. I can't help but feel like there's also like some good plays you could do with a 10/10 commander, some cards that would interact really well with Raised by Giants. I just need your guys' help on kind of finishing this one off. So if you've got any suggestions for my Raised by Giants, Val Candlekeep Researcher, choose a background commander deck. It's a clue list. I will leave a link down below to the rough draft, the 26 cards we have on this list so far. But I think it's fun. I think Simic's a really strong color combination. I think having a command zone engine that's going to be drawing you cards and producing a lot of mana is going to be good. I'm sure there's some other abilities we could dump Val's mana into that would be very, very good. So if you have any suggestions there, let me know. But yeah, with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to the third deck idea of the video. So with these last two decks, they both kind of share a similar theme where I took whatever their main theme and strategy was and kind of turned it into something else. So both of these decks are, this blank deck is actually a blank deck. So let me explain. The first one is this haste deck is actually a blink deck, okay? So a commander that is normally based around haste, I think actually might make a pretty good blink deck. So the commander is Nariv, Heart of the Storm, being 1, a red, a white, and a black for a 4/5 flying. If a creature you control that entered this turn would deal damage, it deals twice that much damage instead. So something I want to point out here. When anyone reads this card, obviously your brain is going to go to haste. You're like, yeah, if it entered this turn and dealt damage, that's haste. It does double damage. Cool, it's a haste deck. It's Mardu haste. Mardu loves haste. That makes sense. That's not really what I thought. So the first thing that I thought when I read this commander was the fact that it does not say combat damage. If a creature you control that entered this turn would deal damage. Wait a second. That doesn't say combat damage. So any creature that ETBs and does direct damage, like, I don't know, Inferno Titan? Yeah, Inferno Titan will now enter and deal 6 damage divided because it ETBs and does damage the turn it came out. Are you seeing what I'm laying down here? If we blink the Inferno Titan, it will do another 6 damage because it's doing that damage the turn it came out with Nariv in play. So if we can just stack as many of these creatures that ETB and do a good amount of damage to something into the deck with a ton of blink effects, not only is that going to be doing a lot of damage, probably keeping the board clean, doing a lot of damage to opponents, it's also blink, so we can use it to protect Nariv if we need to protect any of our important pieces. I feel like this deck is actually incredibly resilient, and it's a direction that I do not see like anyone going with it. So let's get into like a little bit of the sauce we've got in this deck. This deck has 128 cards in it. Complete opposite problem with this one. I kept finding stuff I wanted to put in this deck. So we run blink cards, obviously like Cloud Shift, Ephemerate, like the cheap blink your creature spells. Those are obviously going to be in here, but we also run the repeatable ones. We run Teleportation Circle, which blinks on your end step, or Conjurer's Closet, which does the same thing, blinks on your end step, to repeatedly blink these creatures, have them re-enter, have Nariv see that they re-entered when they do damage. When they do damage, Nariv doubles that damage. I think it's actually pretty decent, if you ask me. Keep in mind, if we have multiples of these creatures in play, like let's say we have 3 or 4 creatures that do pretty good damage when they ETB, we could play something like Lae'zel's Acrobatics to blink multiple creatures on our board, have them all re-enter, have Nariv see them all re-enter and do damage, have Nariv double all that damage. Not bad again. It's also a blink deck, so I put Carter Doomscourge in here. I think that's just a no-brainer. If you have like a teleportation circle and Carter Doomscourge, congratulations, no one can swing at you, and everything's permanently goated. But let's talk about some of the ETB damage effects that I really like. Some of my favorites, Grasping Thrall. 3, a white, and a black for a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. That's right. It's not each opponent loses 2, even though it's Orzhov. I have no idea why. It's each opponent takes 2 damage, and we gain 2. So if we have Nariv out, our commander, when Grasping Thrall enters, it will be dealing 4 damage to each opponent. And a 5-drop 3/3 flying that just dealt out 12 damage, I think that's not that bad at all. My personal favorite card in the entire deck is Farragax Giant. 4 and a red. 3/3, Tribute. As this creature enters the battlefield, an opponent of your choice may place 2 1/1 counters on it. Okay? When Farragax Giant enters the battlefield, if its tribute was not paid, it does 5 damage to each opponent. This card's awesome, okay? So you're probably just going to get a 5-drop 5/5 most of the time because opponents aren't going to want you to do that. But if you're in a situation where you really need to take out an opponent, you could use this politically. Hey, I'm going to play Farragax Giant, and if I choose you, will you not pay the tribute? So everyone takes 5, and then thanks to Nariv, everyone's going to take 10, and that's enough for that guy to be taken out. I feel like there's some political plays you can make with Farragax Giant. If you can get this thing to fire off 10 damage to each opponent for 5 mana, I think you could politicize your way into a 10 damage right there. What about Colossus of the Blood Age? 4 red white 6/6. When it enters, it does 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. Similar to the 2 damage Thrall, yeah, doing 6 damage to each opponent and gaining 3 life on a 6 mana 6/6 that when it dies you can discard any number of your hands or any number of cards out of your hand and draw that many cards. Sure. You see what I'm saying about this deck? It actually seems pretty good. You could also run like very interesting one-time smaller damage effects that become way better with Nariv. So something like Dagger Caster is 3 in a red for a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. So if Nariv's out, that's 2 damage to each opponent on a 4 mana 2/3 that also does 2 damage to each creature the opponents control. I don't know about you, there's a lot of tokens in Casual Commander, or at least my games. Dagger Caster could do some serious work. There's way more in here that I would talk about, but I don't want the video to run too long. So my last one that I want to talk about, Hellhole Rats. I think this one's awesome. 2 a black and a red, 2/2 haste. When it comes into play, so ETBs, you can blink it, target player discards a card. Hellhole Rats deals damage to that player equal to that card's converted mana cost. So we just blink this thing. Just you discard, you discard, you discard, you discard. Oh, that was a 5-drop, you take 10. You discard, you discard. Oh, that was a 4-drop, you take 8. And not only can we blink these really powerful damage effects and then get them to double with Nariv, we're also in red, so we can just make token copies of some of these effects and have them double with Nariv. So something like, I don't know, the Jolly Balloon Man, making 1/1 token copies of stuff. We can make 1/1 token copies of any of the creatures we just talked about that do damage when they ETB, and that counts as a creature dealing damage the turn it came out. We're looking good. So we can blink, create token copies of these massive creatures that will enter the battlefield and deal direct damage, and then double that direct damage thanks to our commander, and then we can use the blink to protect our commander to protect those pieces. I don't know, I think there's something here that's very, very cool. You guys gave me some really cool suggestions for this deck on stream. Explosive Prodigy. Yeah, dealing damage to a creature equal to the number of colors on permanents we control. This is going to be dealing 6 damage for 2 mana most of the time, which is insane. Flame Rush Rider, another way to get copies of stuff. Yeah, Fanatic of Mogus was a great suggestion. I don't know how I missed this one. Deal damage to each opponent equal to our devotion to red. Sure. Tons of good suggestions here. But that's the general layout of this one. This is a Mardu, blink when creatures enter the battlefield and deal damage, double that damage deck. I really like this one, actually. As I said, 128 cards. This is one that was way easier to build and way more fun to build. This is more about whittling down cards. So if you want to take a look at this list and maybe suggest some cards that need cut that maybe shouldn't make the list, let me know about that. And with that, we're going to move on to the 4th and final deck of today's video. Okay, so the title of this deck is This Life Gain Deck is Actually a Token Deck. So let me explain. The commander is Shana Purifying Blade. Being a green, a white, and a blue for a 3/3 lifelink, at the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do, draw X cards. X cannot be more than the amount of life you gained this turn. So, yeah, we're still going to be gaining life. But how we gain life? That's where my deck's a little different. So most Shana decks are going to just be life gain decks, okay? You're playing all these cheap ways to gain life. This 1 and a white gain 5 life card becomes really good because now it's 1 and a white, gain 5 life, and then at the end of your turn potentially draw 5 cards off Shana. I totally get it. Where my brain went with this is I'm pretty sure there are an insane amount of Soul Sister effects in the game right now. And if you don't know what a Soul Sister effect is, it's like a Soul Warden type creature, a creature that will gain you life whenever a creature enters, specifically on our side of the board. Soul Warden does everybody's side of the board, but we really only care about our side of the board. But there are a ton of these ETB gain life effects, like Life Creed Duo, Prosperous Innkeeper, Aunt May, Lunarch Veteran, Distinguished Conjurer, Daxus, Dazzling Angel, Impassioned Orator, Hinterland Sanctifier, Tristani, Suture Priest, Halaya, Courser of Crufix, Guide of Souls, and Soul Warden. So what this deck does is runs all of those, okay? So you're going to have 1 or 2 of these out most games, and then we're going to start making tokens, because then when those tokens ETB, they're going to be triggering these ETB life gain effects insanely. So let me give you an example. We have a Soul Warden in play, let's say, plus a Hinterland Sanctifier. And then we have an Adeline in play. Every time we attack with Adeline, we're going to be making 3 1/1s, and those 3 1/1s ETBing are going to trigger both of our ETB gain 1 life creatures, so we'll be gaining 6 life every time we swing with Adeline. So compare that to the other way of kind of building this deck. Run default life gain cards, get huge card draw off of them. This version of the deck, run tokens, go wide as hell, have a really good board state, gain just as much life, draw just as many cards. And there's just so many good cards that interact with this strategy. Cat Collector. Whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, make a 1/1 cat. Oh, sure. Make a bunch of tokens, gain a bunch of life. We just gained a bunch of life. Make another cat. Cat ETBs. Triggers our gain of life on ETB creatures. Oh, and keep in mind we're drawing a bunch of cards. So Psychosis Crawler, sure, run it. Why not? Ominous Seas, every time you draw 8 cards, remove the counters and make an 8/8 Kraken. That's going to happen all the time in this deck. How about a Nykthos Paragon? Yeah, whenever we gain life, put that many 1/1 counters on every creature we control. Oh, is that going to be good in a go wide token life gain deck? Huh. I'm not sure. Again, the deck has access to Simic, so we can run Adrix and Nev, doubling the amount of tokens we're creating. Springhearten and Tuco, sure, make 1/1s that will just trigger all this life gain. Or, like I did in one of the playtests for this deck, bestow your Springhearten and Tuco onto your Soul Warden. And then every time you play a land, pay 2 and get another Soul Warden. Yeah, that was insane. I got out of control on my health very quick with that game. This one is a 100 card deck, so if you want to playtest it or check it out down below before you drop a comment, go for it. But yeah, let me know any suggestions you've got for any of these decks. And if you liked any of these decks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you like the format, any of that stuff, let me know down below in the comments. If you want to join the Discord, that's down in the description, as is the Patreon members link or the YouTube members link. Both of those start as low as $1 a month, where you can submit your deck list for Friday night deck reviews. I review decks on the channel for Friday night live streams. So if that sounds interesting, there's a little incentive there. You can check out the NixLotus.com website to buy some merch. You can check out the tools that we have there, or check out some of the viewer submitted decks over there. Those are all awesome resources. And I think that's pretty much it. So check out these decks. Let me know how I could fix them, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.